History of environmental policies in the United States. The term environmental policy describes a set of rules, regulations, and laws that are enacted to protect the environment to ensure its sustainability. Environmental policies are used to protect different aspects of the environment such as wildlife, water, air, and other natural resources in the ecosystem. The policies have existed in the United States for a long period, and they have significant historical impacts. This study highlights the historical aspect of environmental policies in the United States. Historical policy on environment. To properly understand the historical environmental policy in the United States, it is cardinal to highlight its brief history. Development of the environmental policies in the United States can be traced back to the onset of 1899 when the country enacted its first environmental law that was aimed at protecting rivers and harbors. In the year 1900, the United States adopted another environmental law that was known as the Clean Water Act. The main aim of the act was to safeguard natural water sources such as rivers, lakes, seas, and streams. In the year 1918, the country adopted another policy known as the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, which was meant to protect the birds in the ecosystem and in particular the birds that were constantly migrating from the U.S. to other countries. In the year 1948, the government enacted the Clean Water Protection Act, which was meant to protect water sources against chemical pollution. The following year, the government adopted another act that was meant to inhibit air pollution. The policy on air protection was later modified to accommodate other requirements. For instance, in the year 1967, the policy was subdivided to ensure improvement in air quality through regular monitoring of air pollution standards. On solid waste management, the government enacted the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act to control the disposal of hazardous and solid waste. From 1972 to 2003, the U.S. government enacted several environmental acts that not only conserved the environment but also promoted consumer protection. For instance, the Consumer Protection Act that was enacted in 1974 ensured that manufactured products were environmentally safe and fit for human consumption. The most important historical policy on the environment was the National Environmental Policy Act, which was one of the most effective environmental policies since it promoted environmental protection on a broad national structure. Also, the policy adoption enabled the U.S. government to create an environmental authority, which was later known as EPA. The body was to oversee the activities and requirements of NEPA. The policy also enabled the U.S. government to strengthen other laws, which included regulations on the disposal of toxic substances, the Clean Water Act, the policy on wetlands and water resources, and the policy on conservation and recovery of resources. NEPA also enhanced environmental protection by ensuring that all the activities of the organizations embraced environmental awareness and responsible use of natural resources. It also ensured that decisions to fund and permit various government projects must consider the environmental impacts of projects. The EPA, as the body created under the policy to facilitate environmental protection, conducted surveys, research, and different studies on environmental issues. The organization collected information continuously that was useful in monitoring environmental trends. The effectiveness of the U.S. environmental policies in the past. The effectiveness of U.S. environmental policies in the past can be attributed to the significant steps made by the government in protecting natural resources and other environmental elements. For instance, policies that were adopted in the early 1900s, such as the Refuse Act and the Clean Water Act, greatly contributed to the protection of water sources and soil. The policies were also effective in controlling air pollution and improving the quality of air in the ecosystem. The establishment of the Air Pollution Control Act enabled the government to control and prevent possible causes of pollution in various sectors of the economy. The effectiveness of the policy was also manifested in its role to promote research and environmental survey studies. The federal government also played a foreground role in enhancing the effectiveness of environmental policies through amendments and the establishment of various provisions under environmental laws. In the year 1970, various amendments were made that expanded the duties of the EPA in ensuring environmental protection. From the amendments, the EPA was given the duty to control activities that caused problems such as depletion of the ozone layer, evaporative emissions, and acid rain. Moreover, agreements between the U.S. government and other states also played an important role in promoting the effectiveness of environmental laws. For instance, in 1993, the U.S. government signed agreements with other countries within the region of North America such as Canada and Mexico to protect the natural resources shared by the three countries. Despite the effectiveness of the environmental policies, it is cognizant to note that changes in the economic environment affected the efficiency of the policies. In addition, economic activities such as mining and oil exploration greatly reduced the effectiveness of the policies. Finally, oil spillage on natural water bodies and land became a big problem that called for amendments to the policies. Historical oil spills in America that called for the amendment of the environmental policies include Lakeview Gusher in 1937, the Brooklyn oil spill in 1950, and the Avila Beach oil spill in 1994. Oil spillage on inland and external water bodies affected the lives of marine animals and other aquatic plants, hence the need for protection through amendments to environmental policies. One of the most remarkable amendments was the establishment of the Spill Prevention, Control, and Countermeasure Rule, which was aimed at controlling oil spillage in inland and external water bodies. The amendment also introduced other policies such as Facility Response Plan Rule and National Contingency Plan that were also used to control oil spillage. The effectiveness of the policies had a lot of benefits in controlling environmental pollution and the conservation of natural resources. For instance, the policies on oil spillage not only prevent pollution of water bodies but also conserved marine life. Policies on clean air protection and disposal of chemical substances played a great role in preserving the ozone layer. Conclusion. Drawing from the historical aspect of the U.S. environmental policies, it is evident that the government has been committed to promoting environmental conservation. The historical aspect also reveals that environmental policies play an important role in the development of a nation in economic, political, and social aspects.